ganar un torneo de Copa Colchanitas es un gran desafío, pero retener el título, defenderlo, eso todo. ¿Cómo está la preparación y cómo se siente para esta aventura que arranca ya?
Sobrang di ko pa mapaniwala. Maraming salamat sa suporta. At sana patuloy yung support.
So looking forward to play against Alex because we played in Osaka.
For United States, especially the juniors, I think it's a great opportunity to be exposed to this level and this.
This is more than a tennis narrative. It's a clash of spotlight and pressure, claims of advantage and questions of loyalty, quiet restraint and personal reckoning, centered on a young competitor who chose she would no longer absorb disrespect with a polite smile. Long before a racket moved, before a ball ever bounced, Eala had already entered the most intense week of her professional life, and the trigger didn't come from the court. It came from a closed room filled with influence, murmurs, and pride. Welcome back, and remember to subscribe to this channel, where we don't skim the surface of stories, we pull them apart, because what you're about to hear isn't about who struck the sharpest shot. It's about what happens when someone attempts to compress your entire existence into a single line and you refuse to accept it. Philippine sports had never experienced tension like this, and when it was over, nothing felt familiar anymore. The country didn't simply observe tennis this week, it absorbed it. It debated it. It chose sides. And standing at the center was Eala, composed on the surface, intense beneath, prepared to show the world that respect isn't handed out, it's proven and sometimes firmly defended. The scene was set far from flashing lenses, inside a private VIP setting in Manila, the kind of environment where reputation often speaks louder than facts and status carries weight. Well-known faces mingled, glasses met, light conversations drifted across the room until, according to multiple accounts that spread rapidly, a single voice cut through the ease. That voice was said to belong to Sarah Geronimo, one of the country's most influential pop figures, and what followed sent shockwaves through Philippine sports culture. The claim was direct, harsh, and damaging. Eala, the athlete carrying the hopes of a nation's tennis future, was allegedly framed as a product of wealth rather than effort, a privileged player who paid her way forward, a name built because her family could afford Europe, Spain, and elite training centers. Years of discipline were reduced to finances. Effort was brushed aside as access. Struggle was redefined as comfort. Then came another blow. Reports suggested that Alex's loyalty to the Philippines was questioned, her decision to train overseas portrayed as turning her back, her international path twisted into a lack of commitment. The message was clear and cutting. You left. You don't belong here. You didn't earn this place. For anyone who understands what elite competition truly demands, that kind of statement isn't simple criticism. It's an attack on character. Eala didn't just hear a remark. She heard her entire identity being reshaped in front of people who had never endured the grind of the court, never trained through isolation, never faced loss alone thousands of miles from home. This wasn't casual talk. It was deeply personal. To understand why this moment carried such weight, you have to understand who Eala really is. She didn't grow up chasing attention for entertainment. She left home young, sent to Spain to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy, carrying expectations heavier than her luggage. She learned to live without family, without familiar meals, without language, without comfort. Every morning came with the awareness that failure wouldn't be softened by excuses. She endured the junior circuit, the defeats no one highlights, the victories few remember, the constant travel, the mental solitude. In 2021, she made history by winning the US Open girls doubles title. In 2022, she achieved something no Filipino had done before, lifting the French Open girls singles trophy. She didn't stop there. She kept pushing, earning a bronze medal at the Asian Games, forcing the tennis world to finally notice the Philippines on a map it had overlooked for years. In 2024, she entered the WTA Top 100, then climbed into the top 50, not through hype, but because her performance demanded acknowledgement. None of that was handed to her. None of it was simple. And none of it can be purchased. Resources don't teach you how to hold steady when everything is on the line. Resources don't teach you how to lose in one country, board a flight, land somewhere new, and compete again without applause. Resources don't give you the resolve to stand alone while the world waits for a mistake. That strength is built. That strength is earned. So when Alex heard those words, something shifted. For years, supporters saw her as courteous, reserved, almost timid, the smiling representative of Philippine tennis, careful in interviews, measured in expression. But even the calmest personalities have boundaries, and according to witnesses, this was where Alex reached hers. The response wasn't refined. It wasn't planned. It wasn't filtered. It was honest. It was emotional. It was the sound of someone protecting a lifetime of effort. Exact phrases may never be confirmed, but the message was clear. Do not question my work.
Do not rewrite my path.
Do not doubt my connection to my country. The room reportedly went still. Conversations ended. Smiles faded. It became clear this wasn't a celebrity disagreement for attention. It was a raw truth surfacing. This exchange touched something deeper than sport or music. It exposed a long-standing tension in Filipino athletics, the harmful idea that training abroad somehow makes an athlete less Filipino, less loyal, less worthy of pride. It highlighted the impossible expectations placed on competitors, asked to win globally while staying physically local, asked to reach the highest level without access to the highest resources. Online platforms erupted within hours. Supporters split. Claims of privilege met arguments about opportunity. Some said the comments reflected unequal access in sports. Others saw envy wrapped in nationalism. Analysis pieces filled feeds. Tags trended. The country debated itself. While the internet was loud, Alex became quiet. No emotional posts. No public statements. No explanations. No apologies. Because true competitors don't answer every challenge with words. They choose their stage. And for Alex Eala, there is only one place where responses truly count: the court. The timing couldn't have been heavier. This was the same week the Philippines hosted its first ever WTA tournament, the Philippine Women's Open, a historic step years in the making. For the first time, elite women's tennis wasn't just watched late at night on a screen, it was unfolding at home. And Alex wasn't just participating, she represented it. The pressure was immense. Home crowds don't stay quiet, they expect. Every point carries weight. Every mistake feels magnified. Add the emotional impact of a public clash with one of the country's biggest stars, and many athletes would falter before the opening serve. But Alex didn't arrive unsettled. She arrived focused. Earlier in the season, critics had already begun questioning her after an early Australian Open exit. The whispers returned. Maybe last year was her ceiling. Maybe the pressure was catching up. Maybe she wasn't ready for the stage. The incident involving Sarah Geronimo intensified those doubts. The storyline was ready to consume her. But champions don't debate narratives. They remove them. Her early matches at the Philippine Women's Open weren't showy. They were composed, controlled, precise. No theatrics. No unnecessary drama. Just execution. Yet beneath that calm exterior, something was forming, something sharp, something deeply personal. The tension hadn't disappeared. It was building. And it was waiting for the moment it would finally release. That moment finally came in the round of 16, and if you were paying attention, you could sense it before the opening point. This wasn't simply another match on the draw. This was a settling of accounts. On the opposite side of the net stood Himeno Saketsum of Japan, a name tied to unfinished history, a lingering shadow from Alex Eala's past that had never completely faded. 3 years earlier in Osaka, Saketsum had overwhelmed Alex in decisive fashion, a 6-0, 6-3 scoreline that felt less like a loss and more like a harsh lesson delivered without pause. It was the kind of match that stays with an athlete, the kind that reappears in quiet moments, the kind that silently asks a question every competitor must answer one day. Have you truly evolved, or were you only passing through? That defeat came when Alex was younger, still forming her competitive identity, still learning how to endure life on tour, still discovering who she was when everything went wrong. Now she stood across from the same opponent, on home ground, under the brightest attention of her career, carrying not only old memories, but fresh emotional weight from the turbulence away from the court. Tennis, at its heart, is a solitary test against yourself. There's no teammate to lean on, no time to run down, no explanation that survives the scoreboard. Alex understood that. And from the very first game, it was obvious this was not the same player Saketsum had dominated years before. The movement was cleaner. The decisions were sharper. The posture told the story of someone who had already visualized the outcome. Every rally felt intentional, like punctuation in a sentence she had been writing for years. Saketsum tried to set her tempo, tried to pull Alex into extended exchanges, tried to reclaim the mental advantage she once owned, but the balance had changed. Alex wasn't reacting anymore. She was controlling. She took the ball early, moved forward, and transformed defense into attack with precise efficiency. The crowd sensed it instantly. Each clean winner landed with more weight than the one before. Every clenched fist carried more than excitement. It carried release. This wasn't showmanship. This was relief. When the match concluded, the numbers on the board told part of the story, but not all of it. This wasn't merely a victory. It was a statement aimed at a former rival, at critics, at anyone who believed Eala was a delicate result of circumstance instead of a competitor shaped by pressure. She left the court composed, but the message was already clear. Me against me. That's always the real contest. And Alex had won it convincingly.
There was no pause to reflect.
No space to savor closure or quiet old doubts. Because what came next was even more demanding. Waiting in the quarterfinals was Camila Osorio of Colombia, a completely different challenge. Osorio is not a name you dismiss. At just 23, she had already built a reputation as a relentless fighter, ranked inside the top 100, respected for her speed, toughness, and refusal to give away a single point. She doesn't overpower opponents. She wears them down. She forces one extra shot, then another, until patience cracks. Throughout this tournament, she had already earned the respect of Filipino fans with her intensity and visible drive. This wasn't an antagonist entering the story. This was a worthy opponent. What made the matchup even more intriguing was the uncertainty. Alex and Osorio had never faced each other. No shared history. No familiar patterns. No comfort of experience to lean on in tight moments. This would be pure adjustment, instinct against instinct, plans unfolding live. The match was set for 7 p.m. on center court, under the lights, before a crowd ready to surge with every rally. The kind of atmosphere players dream of and fear at the same time. Home support is powerful, but it's demanding. It lifts you, but it asks for results in return. For Alex, this wasn't just another quarterfinal. A win would send her into the semifinals of the first ever WTA tournament held on Philippine soil. One step from the final. One step closer to a moment that could reshape her career. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. Think about the weight. Claims of advantage. Questions of loyalty. Murmurs about pressure and breaking points. All of it lingering as she prepared for the most important match of the week. Many players would retreat under that spotlight. But Alex had shown something different. She wasn't avoiding the heat. She was stepping directly into it. In her brief words before the match, there was no exaggeration, no dramatic promises. Just focus. Purpose. Steady resolve. She spoke like someone who understood the scale of the moment without being overwhelmed by it. That mindset is dangerous for anyone across the net. Because athletes who stay calm under stress are the ones who take control late. This unfolding chapter revealed sides of Eala the public hadn't fully seen. Yes, she was skilled. Yes, she was disciplined. But now it was evident she was also resilient, willing to confront issues head-on, unwilling to let others define her story. She didn't answer doubt with spectacle. She answered with execution. That quality is shared by the greats. Serena Williams didn't debate her place in history. She earned it. Rafael Nadal didn't justify himself. He worked until the questions ended. Novak Djokovic didn't ask for approval. He secured it through results. They all transformed skepticism into momentum. Alex was beginning to speak that same language. The strategic duel against Osorio promised depth. Osorio thrives in drawn-out rallies, using movement to reset points and drain opponents physically and mentally. Alex's strength lies in measured aggression, taking time away, moving forward, refusing to let points stretch endlessly. The challenge would be balance. Assertiveness without excess. Emotion without loss of control. The crowd would rise. Momentum would shift. Errors would come. The deciding factor would be composure. The emotion from the off-court tension had powered her earlier rounds, but emotion is a sharp tool. Used wisely, it refines. Used poorly, it unravels. Alex had to stay on that edge without slipping. Mentally, the edge leaned her way. She had rhythm. She had confidence. She had the crowd. But she also carried a burden Osorio didn't. National expectation is heavy. One stumble, and the story changes. Suddenly, it's about pressure. About faltering. About unfinished promise. This match would determine which narrative survived. One thing was already clear. This was no longer just a tournament appearance. This was a defining chapter. Whatever the result, Eala was no longer simply the courteous prodigy. She was a competitor who faced criticism, confronted disrespect, and responded in the only way that matters in sport. Performance, results, excellence. And as the lights prepared to glow and the crowd prepared to rise, Philippine tennis collectively held its breath, waiting to see whether this fire would carry all the way into history. And if you're following this journey, make sure to subscribe to this channel. This is the point where stories stop living as ideas and start turning into legacy, because everything Eala had endured up to now was no longer distant noise. It was pressure compressed into one defining night. Quarterfinals. Home court. Prime time. A country watching not just for excitement, but for affirmation. This had moved beyond rankings or prize checks. This was about significance. About whether an athlete labeled as advantaged, questioned for her decisions, and examined for her identity could stand at the heart of the storm and refuse to fold. As Alex stepped onto center court beneath the lights, the energy was charged in a way no broadcast can fully convey. This wasn't courteous clapping. This was faith. This was thousands of people placing their hopes onto one moving figure, one player asked to carry the emotional weight of a nation that had waited decades for a moment like this. Camila Osorio felt it as well. It showed in her focus. This was unfamiliar ground, not hostile with anger, but heavy with loyalty. Every warm-up exchange echoed with sound. Every step was observed. When play began, it became obvious immediately that nothing here would be gifted, everything would be earned. Osorio did exactly what her reputation promised. She ran. She pursued. She stretched rallies until breath shortened and muscles burned. She made Alex strike again and again, testing restraint, daring impatience to surface. Early on, the tension appeared. A forehand pushed wide. An approach rushed. The crowd shifted uneasily, expectation pressing down. This was the danger zone, where home favorites either elevate or unravel. And this was where Alex revealed the final transformation of her week. She slowed the moment. Between points, she breathed. She checked her strings. She reset. No rush. No visible irritation. Just command. The instant she began stepping forward inside the baseline, the match tilted. Rallies shortened. Contact came earlier. Osorio, so comfortable controlling tempo, was suddenly responding instead of directing. Clean shots landed. The stands erupted. Momentum shifted, not chaotically, but firmly. This was no longer an emotional surge carrying her through. This was a player asserting her game under maximum strain. Each service hold felt deliberate. Each break point converted felt definitive. By the time the contest reached its turning point, one reality was clear. Eala wasn't enduring the moment. She was mastering it, When the final rally ended and the realization settled that she had reached the semifinals, the response was overwhelming. The crowd didn't simply applaud, it burst. This wasn't just happiness. This was release. Years of waiting. Years of invisibility on the global tennis stage. Years of being told that elite tennis didn't belong here. All of it surged out in a single roar. Alex didn't drop to the ground. She didn't shout. She stood still, taking it in, eyes moving across the stands, fully aware of what this instant meant. One win from the final. One step from history. The symmetry of the week became impossible to ignore. Accused of turning away from her country, she was now elevating it. Questioned for leaving home, she was now bringing the world back. Labeled as advantaged, she was proving that pressure can't be bought, only endured. The semifinals awaited, and the stakes climbed higher. A victory there would send Alex into the final of the first ever WTA event held in the Philippines, a scenario so symbolic it felt almost unreal. But sport doesn't reward symbolism. It rewards execution. And Alex understood that. In her words after the match, there was no boasting. No talk of settling scores. Only appreciation, focus, and the understanding that the work was unfinished. That perspective is what separates fleeting moments from lasting legacy. This entire chapter stripped away the myth that elite athletes are untouched by words. Alex felt the impact. She was challenged. She was tested. But instead of letting it fracture her, she refined herself through it. She didn't win an online debate. She won matches. She didn't justify herself in interviews. She justified herself on court. That is the most direct and honest response sport allows. The discussion around athletes training overseas didn't end this week, but it changed. Eala became the living answer. Proof that leaving home is not the same as abandoning it. Proof that global ambition and national pride can coexist. Proof that excellence often demands sacrifices few outsiders truly grasp. And whether the private room confrontation unfolded exactly as described or grew through repetition almost stopped mattering. Because the response was undeniable. The tennis was undeniable. The results were undeniable. As the country waited for the semifinals, one fact was already locked in. Eala had crossed a threshold that can't be reversed. She was no longer only a rising talent or a careful representative. She was a leader. A benchmark. Someone younger athletes could look toward and understand that resilience isn't silence, and dignity isn't submission. She showed that respect doesn't require weakness, that composure doesn't mean surrender, that thinking globally doesn't cancel loyalty. Win or lose from here, her story had already changed. Yet the possibility lingered, thrilling and heavy. Picture her lifting that trophy. Picture the meaning. Picture the quiet it would create. Not the quiet of intimidation, but the quiet of acceptance. The kind that follows undeniable accomplishment. This had grown beyond one event. Beyond one dispute. Beyond one individual. This was Philippine tennis stepping forward, carried by an athlete who refused to let others dictate her direction. And as the light softened and the city waited, one truth became clear. Champions aren't shaped in comfort. They are revealed in confrontation, tempered by doubt, strengthened by pressure. And this week, Eala showed exactly what that means.